Hi. So your task today is to look at a pattern to determine a relationship that'll help you set up a party for the Order of the Dragon ceremony. All right. So if we look at the pattern here, we have one desk with 3 seats. We have 2 desks with 4 seats, 3 desks with 5 seats. Now, so let's call the number of seats, the number of guests. So I'll call that G, and let's call the number of tables N, or number of tables. All right. So this is tables, and this is guests. Okay, so what I want to do is I just want to start collecting some data from this information here. So for one table, we had 3 guests. 2 tables, we had 4 guests. 3 tables, we had 5 guests, and so on. Okay, if I want to know what's going to happen next, it might be useful to draw the next diagram. So here I had 3 tables, so 1, 2, 3, and if I add another one, they'll be like that. And I've got a guest, 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 and so on. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 4 tables had 6 guests, and so on. Okay. So if we continue that chart, right, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tables. Well, if we look at the pattern here, it's going up by 1, right? So it started with 3 guests, and then 4 guests, and then 5 guests, and then 6 guests, and then the next one will probably be 7 guests. And if I look at extending this diagram, I add 2 more, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guests. Perfect. All right, so that works. So what I want to do now is I want to use words or numbers and symbols to represent a rule to calculate the number of guests at a given number of tables. All right, so what we can see, the relationship here is, here's 1 table, 3 guests, 2, 4, 3, 5, 4, 6. So the relationship here is obviously that there's 2 more guests than the number of tables. All right, so there's always 2 more guests than the number of tables. Okay? Or we can also say that the number of guests is 2 more than the number of tables. Okay, so whatever way we want to word it is okay. If we want to use symbols, okay, so that means we want to say G is the number of guests, and we want to say N is the number of tables. Okay? Well, we can see that the number of guests is 2 more than the number of tables. So the number of guests is 2 more than the number of tables, right? So the number of guests is 2 more than the number of tables. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to use that rule to answer some questions. So how many guests can sit at 10 tables? Well, the number of guests is 2 more than the number of tables. So 2 more than 10 is 12. We can also write the number of guests is 10 tables plus 2, which is 12. Okay? How many guests can sit at 25 tables? Well, 2 more than 25 is 27. So 25 and then 2 more is 27. Okay? How many tables are needed to seat 100 people? Okay? So if we have 100 people, we know that the number of guests is 2 more than the number of tables. Okay? So 100 guests is 2 more than the number of tables. So I need a number so that 100 is 2 more than that number. Well, that number is 98. And if you want a mathematical way to do this, it's 100 minus 2, right? So the number of tables is 2 less than the number of guests. Okay? So number of guests is 2 more than the number of tables, which means that the number of tables is 2 less than the number of guests. All right, so that's task 1.